Dear friends, we are talking about this afternoon about the 9-year plan. Isn't that difficult to talk about the 9-year plan after a heavy lunch? If I see you dozing off when I'm talking, I'll come and join you. No, I am joking because I think talking about the 9-year plan is one of the most exciting things you can do. And I tell you why, friends. I become very excited when I talk about the 9-year plan because Baha'u'llah says he has come to build a new world. He has come to build a new society that we know about it, right? He also says who should build it. He says it's the peoples of the world. Not the Baha'is, the peoples of the world. In connection with that plan, the Baha'is have a very special mission, and that is to facilitate for the peoples of the world to learn how to translate the vision of Baha'u'llah to reality. So the aim, the manpower, the capacity, the talents exist in this world, like the seed. It has to be planted to grow. And those seeds are not the Baha'is. It's everyone in this planet, the peoples of the world. But as Baha'is, because we have familiarity, we have belief, we have recognized Baha'u'llah, we facilitate that. So one of I think the implications of this is that when we talk about the 9-year plan, the aim is to facilitate for the people in our cluster to become involved in this conversation and to begin to be involved in the learning process. That's not easy, but it's very exciting. But you know also, friends, when you have a child, you say the plan is for this child to become a surgeon, medical doctor. Just because you have a plan, it doesn't mean that your child tomorrow is a medical doctor. It takes time. It takes preparations. First few years, you only take care of the basics. Gradually, he goes to school, kindergarten, primary, secondary. You know, it takes time. And on the way to becoming medical doctor, there are many also other challenges and problems. But if you persist, if you persevere, finally the day comes when you go to that school where, when you graduate, you'll be a medical doctor. So that becoming a medical doctor is a process, is easier understood. In the same token, for the world to become a better world is a huge process, is long, difficult, I could say torturous, but also complex. We have to learn to do many different things until gradually things shape up into a better world. So if you think, so why 9-year plan is a very exciting time, is that you see when Baha'u'llah came to tell us why he has come for, was there a plan? Did God have a plan? Quite clearly, yes. because he knew that he needs two manifestations of God instead of one. For the first time in history. So there was a plan, the Bab came, then Baha'u'llah came, right? There was a plan for Baha'u'llah to not only reveal his message, but to make sure that after he dies, things will not go divided. So he created a covenant. He told us, you can read and understand my writings, but for official interpretation, only the one I designate. Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi. He says, the peoples of the world, how are the people of the world are going to learn to translate my message into reality? What's the first step for that? Is for the message of Baha'u'llah to reach out to people, right? So the first step was for the faith to progress, to spread. And you know that it took nearly 50 years or 60 years after the coming of Baha'u'llah before the message reached Japan. But it was all part of the plan of God. By 1921, when Abdul Baha died, you could say the faith was everywhere. East, west, south, and north. But was that enough for the people of the world to work together? The answer was no. Baha'u'llah knew that in order for the peoples of the world to work together, you need a system. And he created the administrative system. Baha'i administrative system through which peoples of the world can work together. So Shoghi Effendi first tried to build that before you begin to invite people of the world, Baha'is of the world, to work together. I'm rushing into this, but each one of these can be elaborated beautifully to see that we have gone through different stages. So only in 1937, that is something like 85 years ago, the Baha'is of the world began to work together through different plans. How to learn from one another to translate the message of Baha'u'llah into reality. And right from that beginning, the emphasis was everyone, not just the Baha'is. But of course, the Baha'is had to learn first before they talked to others. So it was natural. So between 1937 and 1995, that's 68 years, what did the Baha'is learn? The Baha'is learned how to teach the faith, how to form Baha'i communities, how to form local assemblies, how to consult with one another, how to live a life of community without priests, how to have a community with everybody equal. All what we have learned about it, we learned at that time. But by 1995, we were very good at it, but then we had become a certain mentality as if we thought this is ours. And if anybody wants to come in, we have to see whether they are good enough to come in. We were not alert to the fact that the message of Baha'u'llah is for everyone. Baha'u'llah does not belong to the Baha'is only. Baha'u'llah belongs to everyone. And as how to translate also is the job of everyone, not just the Baha'is. So literally, in other words, involvement in the life of society was not very strong by 1995. we had learned how to teach, and we have millions of people in 1 year by 1995. Today, if you want to use that approach and bring in millions of people, believe me, it's easy. But Shoghi Effendi had said that you have to learn to have expansion and consolidation hand in hand, so that whoever comes in becomes manpower, who becomes part of the human force, human resources to do the work of the faith. And that is what the House of Justice said between 1995 and 2021. That's what we learned. The point I'm trying to make is that we have been learning the processes that are needed, just the same way that the kid has to go to different schools and learn different skills in order to become a medical doctor. We have been learning different skills and different capabilities at different times. Before 1995, when we were teaching the faith, it was to tell people Baha'u'llah has come, he's a messenger of God. Many people have been given their life in his path. These are his teachings. Do you believe or not? And of course, many people have become Baha'is. But after 1995, we also have learned that that is good. But right at the beginning of the coming of the people to know about Baha'u'llah, they need to know that they can be a protagonist. They can actually put their sleeves up and begin to work. So that's one thing we have learned. But also we have learned that whereas expansion and consolidation, the aim is to assist people to recognize Baha'u'llah as the messenger of God, but we also need to learn to participate in the discourses of society. Even the aim is not necessarily to help to expect people to become Baha'is, but through the discourses of society, you influence thoughts. You make people think about what Baha'u'llah has said. Another field of service, social action. You make people think that for social and economic development, whereas the rest of the world is trying to do the work for people, the Baha'is are trying to build the capacity in people for them to decide what to do for their own development. So, therefore, the areas of service to humanity expanded from expansion and consolidation into expansion and consolidation, discourses of society, and social action. And most importantly, in the past 25 years, we have learned how to live and work with other people. We learned to open the doors of our activities to everyone. We learn not to say, this is our faith, come and join us. We learn to say, this is the destiny of mankind. Baha'u'llah has come to assist all of us to build a better society. Let's learn together. You see the language differences? So we have become, this is the process we learn. And the excitement of the 9-year plan, friends, is that it's the first plan for me. That having learned all this, what is the aim of the 9-year plan? Is to learn how to release the society building power of the faith. So the previous plans, we were learning still bits and pieces. And in 2010, if you remember, the House of Justice had said a framework for action has appeared. Between 2010 and 2021, for 11 years, we tried that framework for action. First in 1,500 clusters, then in 3,000, then in 6,000. So we also have solidified that framework for action. Now, everywhere in the world, is the House of Justice says, all right, use that framework for action to learn how to release the society-building power of the faith. In other words, the actual society building has begun in a much more serious manner. And that is, to me, the excitement. But we should remember that the aim has not changed. The aim is who to build the society is the people in our cluster. So Fukuoka cluster has 2 million people, right? Roughly. The aim is to reach out to these 2 million people, give them the message of Baha'u'llah, create an atmosphere where they will feel welcomed, where they will feel the ownership of the message of Baha'u'llah. And they will feel part of the process to begin to not necessarily do as the Baha'is are doing, but they will use their talent to say, we can do this, we can do this, we can do that. Learn how to translate his vision into practice. Why are we doing book 1 and book 2 and book 3, friends? The aim is not just to have these activities. The aim is that by the words of God that are used in these books, we build the capacity of the people to solidify this process of community building. Yes, in book 1, you create an atmosphere of oneness or unity of vision about our identity. Who are we? What is the prayer? Whatever we do, we will be assisted by divine assistance. The very basic things. But then you begin in book 2 talking about learn how to hold a conversation, how to apply some of this, what we believe in the discourses of society, and go on. And then you begin with children, which is probably the easiest of all. I think the idea of inviting people, young people from the wider society, right away, they don't, to me, it's wonderful that they do book 1 and book 2 and book 3, then think of become an children class or teachers. But there could also be at times challenges to the youth. Would you like to contribute to the betterment of the world? They would, I assure you, they would all say yes. But they will have ideas of change the government, change the economic system, change the political system, none of which they will succeed. But walk with them for them to see that a more practical way is to raise a generation of young people who will think differently. How will they think differently? They will think to see their well-being in the well-being of everyone. They will be no self-centered. The weakness that acting as a blockage for the progress of the world is self-centeredness, greed. Everybody fighting for their own interest. And you need generations of people to think differently. The youth can raise children and junior youth to think that way. And so sometimes I think that this vision that the youth can do it can be a motivation for them to do the books. Yes, I also see that if they do the books, they will get these motivations. But in this part of Japan, if it's correct that there is more and more attention paid to the children, try also this approach and see whether the youth will be motivated by this idea. And I was just talking to one person yesterday. The idea that the Baha'is have a training program, that you could do the training, yes, it's well structured, even though it is not formal. But once you do the training, you can actually begin to learn how to teach children and work with junior youth. Appeared quite appealing to the young gentleman. But it needs something that we need to learn. We need to learn. As a cluster, for you to reach to large numbers, I think you need clear strategies. And nobody will be able to tell you what the strategy is other than yourself. But you have to be audacious. You have to try things. So inviting the youth from the wider society is one possibility. But the possibility that the House of Justice encourages us to examine and learn. Some of these youth, even though they have not gone through the Institute book, may well be very useful if they know the aspiration of the Baha'i community. They would like to be part of it. The House of Justice says, learn the aspirations of the youth and see how you can help them achieve their aspiration. So if their aspiration is to have a better world, offer to them the Baha'i approach and see what they say. So the point I'm trying to make is, because the 9-year plan is now the first major plan that is, we are actually putting our sleeves up and build societies, yet at the same time, it looks like the previous plans, same core activities, same milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3. So if we are not careful, we think we are doing the same thing. We are doing the same thing, but with a very much more clear vision. And that vision is not just to have activities. It's not just to have numbers. It's not just to say milestone 1, 2, or 3, and basically enjoy that you are in milestone 3. You want to establish in a cluster a large number. And unless you get to large numbers, we will not feel the potency of it. You need a large number to be conversing about this subject, that we ordinary people of Fukuoka have the power to make our society a better society. Now, if that was the vision, which I believe we all agree that that's the vision of the plan, then how do I reach to 2 million? If you begin to think that way, I assure you, you'll be frightened, you'll be scared, and you'll either run away from here or you will do very little. Because often when you think you are not able to do things, you take the position of inaction. But remember the growth of a child. When the mom, all what she does is breastfeeding and maybe washing dirty nappies, that is very essential to the growth of the child, but that's how it starts. If you see the way these carpets are made, friend, Persian carpets by hand, you look at the carpet, it's magnificent, intricate design and colorful patterns. But the person who is doing it, and I am familiar with the way Persian carpets are made, the person who is doing it is not a very skillful person. And what they do is very simple. They do one knot at a time and one little row at a time. The secret of their success is that they follow the design of the one who has designed the carpet. The harmony between them, the way they do the design and the way they work, it produces. So for them, often when they look forward, they see very little attractions, because what they see is the warp and the rope of the carpet, white strings, nothing attractive. It is when they look back, they say, wow, is that what we have done? Beautiful design. So in a way, friends, the Universal House of Justice, with the issuance of the letter of 28 November 2023, is telling us, look, friends, look behind and see what a beautiful carpet you have made in the past 100 years. Because the progress of the cause of Baha'u'llah, in spite of its ups and downs and enemies of the faith inside and outside, the political situations, the war, the catastrophes in the world, the economic collapses of several times, COVID and non-COVID diseases, all what has happened in the past, we are now established in every corners of the world. We have nearly 180 national assemblies facilitating working of millions of people like this room together. We have a very good reputation as people who have a global vision, but they act locally. Isn't that beautiful? Tell me who can claim that vision. We have a reputation that we can work, and we love to work with everybody, regardless of their religious or non-religious background, men or women, educated, non-educated. We are a group with reputation that, yes, we are very eager to help to build a better society, but we have no claim to power. We have no intention of taking any position with power in the world. And that makes us very more palatable, because today there are many others who want to do, but at the end of the day, there is also an agenda for themselves. As Baha'is, we are available everywhere, at the grassroots, at the regional level, at the national level, at the international level. And we have succeeded to remain united in spite of many, many efforts to break the faith. So the carpet behind us is beautiful. And to me, that is what makes the 9-year plan more exciting. The 9-year plan is the next stage in the same carpet. And if we, during the 9-year plan, during the, friends, during the 10-year crusade, the 10-year plan, which you won't remember, nor do I don't remember. I think none of us are that old to remember. But if you read about it, there was such a language of urgency. Shoghi Effendi told the Baha'is with such urgency to spread everywhere, form local assemblies, form national assemblies. And the reality was that many of the Baha'is didn't understand what's the urgency. Why do I need to form local assemblies in places where people hardly can read and write, and they don't know anything about consultation, for instance? But the urgency was to do it. And so in 1 year, as you probably know, in 1 year of the 10-year crusade, more than 100 countries were open to the faith, which was the aim of the entire 10-year crusade. That is the response the friends gave to the beloved guardian. Why? Because they didn't understand the urgency, but they did it because of their love for him. Who knew that the formation of the local assembly resulted in the formation of the national assemblies? And before the 10-year crusade, the Guardian passed away, and then the Baha'is were able to form the Universal House of Justice. Some of the urgencies of the plan came to be known better by then. The Universal House of Justice is telling us now that the demand on your task in this 9-year plan is reminiscent of the 10-year crusade. So it may be true that we may not fully understand why the emphasis on these activities, why the emphasis and the urgency on large numbers. But I think we trust that the divine plan is exactly what we need to serve our society. The urgency of it will become clear. In fact, in November 2020, friends, I think the letter is 25th of November 2020, the House of Justice says, in the next few decades, humanity will face situations that are more daunting than ever before. And look back and see what has happened in the world order, in the world affairs, in the confusion that exists in the world since November 2020. So the situation of the world is not going to stay as calm as it was, nor even as calm as it is today, if you can call it calm. And we don't know what is needed for us to do in order to be able to assist humanity. But the House of Justice is saying, do the 9-year plan. So, how did the Friends respond to the 9-year plan, to the 10-year crusade? They did not say to the Guardian, well, I am really so busy with my life that I can only do this or that. They rather said, all right, the beloved Guardian, you want us to do this? I will change my way of life in order to do what is needed. So people left their countries and went international pioneering to places where they didn't even know where it existed. You think that was easy? Of course it wasn't easy. Some who couldn't go international pioneering, they supported those who went. Those who couldn't go international pioneering, they didn't say, well, in Tehran, in the capital, the people are very busy, nobody is coming to the Baha'i meeting. They went to places where the people will come to the Baha'i meetings. They changed their way of life. And then, those who couldn't go this international pioneering or local pioneering, they changed their way of life to create more time. Time is always the issue. How can I change my life so that I have more time for teaching, for spreading the message? And many realized that all these activities and all these creation of these new institutions means more funds for the faith. So they contributed much more generously to the funds of the faith. And the end result was the world was conquered spiritually by the message of Baha'u'llah. The Universal House of Justice was formed, and humanity and the Baha'i community entered the new phase. The new phase where now we no longer have any special individual, but the system of Baha'u'llah's administration is going to now guide the process through the Universal House of Justice. You see what a clever is not the right word, how beautiful a design Baha'u'llah had created? But the beautiful design of Baha'u'llah was only good because we as Baha'is responded to arise and serve it. And so today, friends, we are in such a critical situation. We need in every cluster, and you are one of the major clusters in Japan. You are one of the largest Baha'i community. You are a cluster with milestone 3. The key is how many of us is able to say the progress of the 9-year plan in this cluster is my business. How many of us deep in our heart waiting for someone else to do it, or waiting for the institutions of the faith to do it? You see, again, if you think of a mother, of course, is concerned with her child. But she sometimes may think that, well, you know, my husband can do this, or my other child can do that. Maybe I can ask my mother to do this, because I also have to go to the hair salon, and I do this and I do that. But if the child is sick, the mother drops everything. And the first priority, even if she has to leave behind some of the most important things, she does it. Because the preoccupation is no longer a duty, is no longer a pleasure. It is the question of life and death of the child. The mother becomes a different creation. The question is, so the difference between, yes, I will see what I can do. Well, it's my responsibility to do. It's my duty to do. And it is the preoccupation of my life to do this. These are all means I can do something. But there is a difference when it becomes the preoccupation of my life. And to me, each one of us need to think, how many in a cluster? We think the progress of the plan is the preoccupation of my life. Which then means when the mom's preoccupation is the health of the child, she still has to take care of the household, but she reorganizes things. The sleeping time changes, the way you eat changes, everything changes so that the child is taken care of. And in Japan, I think, like many other developed countries, naturally, you are busy. Of course you are busy. But then the question of the 10-year crusade, people were also busy. That does not mean they neglected their life, but they put the needs of the faith first. And they developed a way of life in such a way that they attend to both. In the process, yes, they might have sacrificed. If I have to go somewhere else that I cannot do my profession, but instead I could do something else to make money, why not? Priority becomes implementing the goals of the plan. With that in mind, I think, friends, then look at the 9-year plan. If you want to reach the 2 million, of course, it's realistic to think there is no way I know how to reach to 2 million. But I can make a plan to reach to 200. Do I know how to reach to 200? I cannot learn how to reach 2 million. but I can learn how to reach to 200. But if I don't make the 200 a goal, even that will not happen. Because I will just, you see, when you say, I want to reach to 200, then you make an assessment, how? How am I going to reach? You remember in the 9-year plan, the House of Justice says every cluster has a goal, and every goal has a path to achieve it. So if you set a goal of 200 people, what's the path? And you decide on the path, then you see, do you have enough time and energy to do that? If not, how can I create that time? So setting goals, describing the path to achieve it, and see what do you need to achieve it, it becomes a skill. It's a necessity. You cannot build the world without plans. If God began the process with the plan of 2 manifestations, if God planned and said there are 2 major plans, the major plan of God and the minor plan of God, how can we progress in our cluster with no accurate? We have the plan, but we need to be more accurate. The 9-year plan tells us, the House of Justice tells us that, first of all, in paragraph 4, the House of Justice explains to us in a beautiful language what is it that we are doing. To me, the House of Justice is helping us to be able to speak to the people who may not understand some of the Baha'i terminologies, that this is the aim of the plan. But then the House of Justice says, beginning from paragraph 5, the House of Justice begins some very practical advice. One of them says, look at what you're doing as 2 profoundly spiritual process. And they name it. One is the diffusion of the light of the message of Baha'u'llah, and second, as the penetration of the root of the cause of God in the soils of human heart. These are the 2 profound spiritual progress. Then they say each of which means either of these 2, they have measurable outcomes. I know that when I read it, I asked my question, why is the House of Justice telling us that they have measurable outcomes? To me, it means do not hesitate to measure your progress. Because sometimes when we are involved in very deep spiritual process, we think Baha'u'llah will do the job. Of course Baha'u'llah will do the job. But as part of our learning, we need to learn, are we progressing? I'm doing this and this and this for the faith for the past 2 years in this cluster. Fine, wonderful. But what have you achieved? What are you able to measure? And then once you do that reflection, the question would be, are there more efficient way of doing it? Friends, the methods of the faith, the House of Justice is, are quite scientific. We trust and we rely on the divine assistance and on Baha'u'llah's power to do it, but we also believe that the guidance of Baha'u'llah needs to be done in sort of scientific methods. The scientific method is use the experience, allow large numbers to do it, so that by having large numbers, you eliminate humans' errors, and you come up with proven approaches. That's the essence of being scientific. But once you have a proven strategy, then do it methodically. One of the, you see, friends, like yesterday I think we were talking, a farmer cannot say, I do methodically. I plant the seed today, I will water it in 3 months, and when I come back from holiday, I'll go and see if there is any insect. It doesn't work that way. The science of growing the crop is also a certain regularity, intensity, and persistence. So the society building power of the faith will come a lot easier if things are consistent. And for consistency, we need time. For time, we need to rearrange our lives. So these are all practical concepts, scientific concepts. And as a Baha'i, harmony between science and religion will come when you trust in Baha'u'llah's assistance, but you also adopt scientific approaches. So setting a goal, thinking of a path. Now, don't worry if the path you choose is not the right path. You will figure it out and you'll change it. That's not the issue. That by itself is scientific. If a cluster learns how to reflect, and I'm saying learn how to reflect, because also, friends, reflection, I was talking to one of the friends saying, reflection to me is an art. An art, in order to do it properly, you have to practice a lot. How do I reflect individually? And how do I reflect collectively? Often, and then if you go to the guidance of the House of Justice, it says reflection. It's a long process of reflection. Begins by sharing experience, analyzing the experience, identify the spiritual principles involved, figure out the obstacles, find the solution for the obstacle. You see, all the way. But I think many times our reflection just goes around the storytelling. And storytellings are often told by believers who also drag on the story so long that you get tired. And out of respect, we don't tell one another, I've heard that story, please, you don't have to tell me again. Or there is so much of length of story that you don't get a chance to analyze it. So the art, any problem that you have, in my understanding, is if you are able to reflect with the help of the guidance of the House of Justice, you will figure it out in your cluster. But are we aware of that? Or do we look, you see, reflection also has different purposes. If the reflection is to create excitement and encouragement and so on, of course, then everybody is welcome. But for reflection that aims at analyzing the situation and figuring out the solution, is it practical to think that everybody is able to do that? Or do we have to have reflections at different levels? When the tutors get together and reflect, they are focusing on how to become better tutors. That's wonderful. When the children class teachers get together, how to become better teachers, that's wonderful. But at some point, some people need to get together and say, why aren't we reaching to 200? And figure that one out. So the process we are involved is complex, but not complicated. The process we are involved is difficult, but doable. The process we are involved welcomes contributions from everyone, but not necessarily at the same level. There are people whose responsibility, service to the cause, wants them to figure out the problems and guide the process. We have structures. We have ATC, we have institute, we have this, we have that. We have the auxiliary board members, we have the assistant to auxiliary board members. But at the times, also the House of Justice says, those who are in the forefront of the work of the faith, they can get together and see how is the progress. Which means that we are not also limited to the structure. If there are people who have ideas and abilities of analyzing it more accurately, invite them to the gatherings. So all to say, friends, that it is just far more than just inviting your neighbors to a book, even though that is essential. The aim, as I mentioned, you see, here, if you remember, I know you have read it, but if you remember what is a milestone 1, what is a milestone 2, and what's a milestone 3, and if you don't, I suggest you extract this and put them in one page and avoid the whole message so that you actually understand what these 3 are. And here is my understanding, what I remember. If you have even one tutor who is on a regular basis, is able to hold study circles or devotionals in a study circle, in a cluster, and have a few people regularly come to the training institute and build their capacity, that's milestone 1, right? I'm just roughly. If this progresses, and now you have more activities, more people involved, more than one tutor. Now, so far, so good, because I'm talking about the number of activities. But if you listen to the House of Justice describing the milestone 2, it also talks about some consultations, some coordinations. So it appears that around 20 activities are happening, but with some coordination. That's milestone 2, right? Milestone 3, even though, yes, we are saying that the number of activities is 100 core activities, but the House of Justice says there are so many other quality issues with the milestone 3 that I'm not going to go through it, but it does say and denotes what we are doing, denotes the appearance of a system to reach to the large numbers. So by the time we have reached the milestone 3, and we have not forgotten that the aim is to reach out, we should have some idea of a system how to reach. We, many places, tend to sort of grab the number, which is essential, but then don't think of friends, you know the Baha'i communities, clusters, where there has been large Baha'i communities. And these activities have been done mostly by the Baha'is. Yes, they are milestone 3, but most of the activities are with the involvement of the Baha'is. In fact, if you look at your own statistics, and you see, I have looked at your statistics. Actually, it was quite telling. Do you remember your statistics, or shall I look at it? Just tell me the total number of people from the wider society involved in your cluster. Maybe I can tell us. Sorry?
She's trying to connect to
Okay. Okay. Fukuoka. Fukuoka 1? Okay. Fukuoka 1, it says here that you have total activities 76, 200 people are involved, a participant, and 66 are people from the wider society. Now, does that sound right to you? That's yours. Sorry?
It sounds kind of high.
High. Okay. Okay. But let's say it's not high, right? So far, you have succeeded in 66 people from the wider society being participating. I would say this. So for, and you have, let me see. Yeah. And you have something like 140 Baha'is so for every 2 people, 1 person from the wider society. Okay, so that's one actual figure. But you remember that the House of Justice was telling us about 2 processes, 2 spiritual processes. One is, so to 66, I would say it's an indication of the spread of the light of Baha'u'llah. You have reached out to 66 people. Fair enough. Now, whether you could do more and so on, that's a different story. But if you want to measure it, how are you measuring the penetration of the root of the cause of God? This statistic doesn't show. And you have to decide, how are you going to measure it? To me, that's not what you have to, but you have to come up with your own way of measuring. To me, if someone is holding, you see, people from the wider society must know that they can hold these activities themselves. They don't have to become registered members of the Baha'i community. That is when their level of commitment is increasing. That is a sign of the penetration of the cause. When someone is not just the participating, but they begin to actually support the work, when they begin to invite others, whatever it is that your circumstances allow you to measure, you have to keep an eye on that growth of the root of the cause. Why? Because there is no way, friends, that you will reach out even to the 200 without the active participation, not in the core activities alone, the active participations of the people in the process of reaching out to people. they have to have the vision. They have to have an idea of the 9-year plan. And they decide that I am part of this. They have to recognize the significance of larger numbers. Sometimes in Canada, I have seen when you have a devotional meeting, 5 people, 6 people, 10 people, it becomes such a nice club. They don't want to invite anymore. In fact, when we have raised the question, they said, no, don't bring new people. We are very comfortable. That's not what we are doing. But I think God knows in the minds of our own self, as well as in the minds of others, what is it that we are looking at these activities? Is it a nice way of spending time with neighbors? Is it, I don't know, you can describe it for different tastes, different things. But they are portals to entry by troops. What? We should not forget. And then there are times when people will not immediately enter these activities, but they will be interested in some other elevated conversations through which then they will come to this. The key element of the core activities is capacity building. And we know we are not building other people's capacity. We are assisting themselves to use the words of God to build their capacity. So it is critical reflections such as these, friends, that needs to go into reflection and a way of measuring. These analyses, I was, believe it or not, in Switzerland, of all places. They had spots in the country whereby for every one Baha'i, they had 7 people from the wider society in the core activities. But then they had not differentiated between that and another place in the same country where for every one Baha'i, they had 1 person from the wider society. Because if they do, immediately is, what is it that they do, the one with 7 people from the wider society? What are they doing that we can learn to pass on to other spots? So you too need to look at, yes, you are one cluster, but you are a large cluster. There must be in your cluster different pockets, one family, one neighborhood, something, and make these analyses for that spot, if you like, pocket of believers, and see if there is anything that one family is doing that appears to be more productive than others. Learn from one another. So the art of learning again, learning from one another, because nobody has the answer. Nobody knows the full answer. But I think we can learn from one another. So these are some of the, in my opinion, shifts in thinking. That even though we are doing the same activities, we need a shift in the way we do. Goal setting, a path to achieve a goal, a discussions about what do we need to achieve that goal, which often will turn into the question of time. And we don't have time, honestly, friends, after being here and looking at your radiant faces, I feel comfortable to do, that's not the answer. We don't have time is not the answer. That Japan's way of life is so busy is not the answer. If the Japanese mind and heart somehow grasp the vitality of this for their young generation, that before it's too late, we want to make sure, Japanese want to make sure that their youth will not become a slave to the way, for instance, the Western life at the moment is going. the answer is to empower the youth. You cannot dictate, you cannot lecture the youth to be good, but you can show them the way to build their own capacity to decide how they want to live. And really, I don't know how to describe it, but there is a logic about Japanese mind which is very, very adorable. It's just that you introduce the elements of the guidance of Baha'u'llah to that logic so that they can then figure out to say, oh, I do need to bring a balance to my life. I do need to reduce the life is not just material. And the spiritual life is not just some very good qualities that I have already acquired. The spirituality today means, how can I be an effective contributor to the betterment of the world? Japan has learned already that you can only be prosperous if you are part of the world. You cannot be prosperous in isolation. You cannot be prosperous on your own. Today, humanity is facing the challenge of climate change, hunger, war, disease, and we are not safe alone. So we do need to think of the betterment of the world. And betterment of the world requires beginning capacity building from very, very simple thing. That is the aim of the goal of the 9-year plan, building societies that are diverse but united. I wouldn't be surprised if Japan in 10 years would also experience a situation where you will have to have many, many more diverse people living in your country. And it's good to be prepared. It's good to be prepared because the rest of the world, Canada, the United States have opened their door. You can hardly, and I'm not exaggerating, you can hardly get 10 people who will all be Canadians. In one hand, you can say that's wonderful. The sadness is they are not prepared. The best they can do is to think these people, we must tolerate one another. Toleration is not the answer. We are the members of one family. We have to live together with joy and harmony. And the aim of the 9-year plan is to prepare us for that. But on the other hand, the materialism, the forces of materialism makes us so busy that we cannot even listen. We cannot even have time to read and reflect. If you are busy from 6 in the morning to 8 in the evening, and when you come, you are exhausted, you eat, listen to television, and halfway listening, you are asleep on your couch, and the following morning, the same program, well, yes, admittedly, you don't have time. But also it's true that we should be in control of our lives and not allow money and materialism to dictate the way of life. So I think there are more things to be said about the 9-year plan, but maybe I should stop here and see what do you think? Whatever is the way, whether it's a break, whether questions and answers.